live. Are we not? I'm not too sure. It just flashes. We'll find out, sure enough. There you go. It says we're live.
Yeah, we're live. Yeah. I don't know why. For some reason, it wasn't going through. It was taking me to an old post on mine. So yeah, but it's live on yours. So
we're here. Hi, folks. How are you? Welcome to Small Business Chat. Karen and I are having a little bit of a tech issue today, obviously. But here we are. We are talking today about content marketing for your business, because after talking about a website and how wonderful it is and how you need to really consider what you're putting on your website, there is obviously a space for blogs and content, but also for me, with a lot of the marketing and PR activity I do, the results are how do we drive traffic back to that website or to something that's a bit more tangible, like sign-ups, sales. So what I find really interesting whenever I do content marketing strategy sessions with clients is that the whole point is people think that their social media activity is content, as in that's their strategy. If I fill up my posts and I just try and I have to do 4 posts a week or 3 posts a week, and I just have to fill that up, and what do I do? And I see this hamster wheel going on in their brain. And it's great. Sometimes that's all you can do. You know that you've got certain things to talk about and you've got to place it. But I don't know about you, Karen, I find that exhausting. If there's lack of direction, you're not too sure what to talk about. And also you're trying to do like one post for like one platform, another post for another. It's just not sustainable, really. And I think we've got enough to do as business owners to come up with all of these things to actually think, oh my God, I should have been posting on this and I should have been posting on that. And so what we were going to talk about today is, and especially this links in with a lot of the branding work. So Lynn, where she was on talking about branding, we come across our branding, our brand message, our values, our personality. These are all amazing content pillars for exactly what we should be talking about in our brand, about our business. So what if we found an easier way of, okay, if I did one thing, how could I then repurpose and share that across all of the other platforms? And I've talked about this quite a bit, Karen, but I always say that media's changed. So where we used to think about media and PR as about, or even marketing as broadcasting, right? We need to get out, we need to show that we're in the newspapers, we're on TV, on broadcast, or we're online. It's really changed the media landscape. So again, to reiterate, there are 4 types of media that we now work with. It's either paid, it's either earned, it's either social, or it's owned. Paid, obviously ads. Earn is your PR, so somewhere we've done something, we've created a story, and then we've got that coverage. We haven't had to pay for it, so we've earned that because of the work that we've put in. It's social media, but it's owned. It's our own content. I consider content as your owned media. So your blog, your video, your podcast. You've been doing so much video. two shows a week. You're a pro.
I know, but then, for me, there's quite a lot of effort and stuff that goes into that. But, that is creating a lot of content, which is evergreen content as well, both with this show we do here, with the show I do on Tuesdays. But then, we'll go into it, but it's sort of how do you then reuse that again and again and repurpose it?
Exactly. And again, you're a brilliant example of this, and you're no different to most clients if I've spoken to, or actually any other sort of business owner when they're struggling. You know what it's like when we were trying to pull together your content plans. Of it was together. There was a strategy, but there was lots of little bits like, oh, I must get this case study, and I must do this, and I must do that. And I remember your content plans at the beginning. Have you found that by focusing on one thing, it simplified it? Or is it more?
No, definitely. I think it's, first of all, I think it's finding your voice. I think that's what I struggled with first. So, yes, content ideas, but it's finding a way of getting that across. And I think, and it put me off until I started, like you, getting more active on LinkedIn. And just trialing it out and just putting stuff out there, and over and over and over again, and through practice you start to find what's working, what's not, what's, you know, a way of speaking. And that's when your kind of brand voice comes in, and your values and your niche and your topics and everything as well. And I did, like a lot of people I've heard, you know, they've got, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have a plan or a strategy. And yes, we're talking here, you should have a plan and a strategy, not just keep going. But for me, that was a kind of finding my strategy or plan by just going and doing that to start. But as I've gone through that process, I've now created a weekly plan, and that's planned out kind of in advance as well.
I think there is definitely, when you're sort of stepping up, so that's why in the first instance it's absolutely fine just to start posting. And I think that I have incredible you know, respect for anybody that can do things consistently, you know, because I can't for myself. So, you know, if you can post consistently, that's wonderful. But
what do you mean you can't? We do the show every week. We turn up every Wednesday morning. That's really, I know, consistent.
That's the only thing that I've been able to do. But I mean, previously, like, again, how long has that taken me to do? And that needed structure. That also needed, for me, I had to have the sort of like, what's the direction? What are we doing with this? Why are we doing it? For me, in order, you know, that's where the enthusiasm and passion comes in, because otherwise, when you don't have that enthusiasm and passion, you're less likely to commit to it. So that's why it has been so much easier the past year to do this. But what I would say as well is that, yeah, if you're starting out and you are looking at that content plan, that is fine. There's loads of topics to talk about. But equally, when you're doing your branding work, there is that point where you want to level up. And you want a little bit more, you want more engagement. It's not about putting things out there. Are they getting a response? Are they not? There's always that element of like, what's the return of what am I doing here? So I would also say that the branding work that's been carried out, I think you've done your branding work, I've done mine. But again, when you're looking at like, what are the values? What's the tone of voice, like you say, then finding the medium that suits you, because I genuinely believe, I mean, I never would have envisaged video and lives being something that I would be happy doing. I'm a blog girl, like, you know, I'm behind the scenes, I don't mind writing, this is fine. So I did get out of my comfort zone, and I've had to do guest podcasts now. And I'm like, oh, okay, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought. So actually, by testing it, like you said, it has been a bit of an eye-opener as to what that main piece of content is. But it is one of those three. It's either words, it's how we're engaging, how we're learning. You know, we all have preferences. And I absolutely love, like, I think it's Amy Woods, so she's content times 10, I think it is. So it's brilliant. She talks about repurposing that content. And like you said, how much time goes into a really considered piece of content, and it's longer form, because you do want to show your expertise, you do want to show your knowledge, but there's so much work that goes into it, like things like keywords. Like, you might not know this, but I have to do a little Google search and keyword search to find out what to put in this title of every small business chat, to make sure that if somebody was searching for it either on YouTube or Facebook or even online where, you know, the blog might be, it's like, right, okay, you know, can it be found? So there's
and a similar thing I did with my shows. You know, we were me and the lady was helping me. We were sort of coming up with really kind of cool, creative, you know, sort of a bit of out there titles related to it, which was great. Sort of like getting the, you know, creative juice flowing, coming up with something different. But then actually, as I was going along, I was thinking, actually, are people actually searching for this?
So that's what happened with ours at the beginning as well.
Yeah, and it made me think, it made me look at mine and go, well, actually, I'm not necessarily putting in there what people are searching for. And obviously people will search through Facebook, people will be searching through YouTube. They're not going to find those. So I've started tweaking now. So maybe a bit more boring, the titles, but it's more related to what people might actually be searching for.
But the content is not. So you provide that value, education and inspiration. It is not. I can vouch for that. So the other thing is that there is so much layered to go into that. Could you imagine doing that for everything? So again, this is why it's like, what is your one core piece of content? Like, just stick to one. And I loved this quote that I used in social media posts, but it was like, you know, traditional media is like showing that you're this, telling everyone you're this rock star, but content marketing is actually proving it. Because what I'm loving about audio is you can hear that person. In video, you can see that person, you're reading their thoughts. And again, it's a way of coming across a little bit more effectively, I think, than just a very quick post of, here's a link that I'm sharing about this article, without that's not as considered, for example, because you're just filling in content, whereas there's a lot more thought behind it. And it's much more pinned to your values. There's a bit more of the personality that's coming out. So with the longer form content, you can definitely show your personality more, your values.
Yeah.
And it can,
well, I think that's kind of as well, you know, for people, you know me, I don't really like blogging, and yet when I start writing a post, sometimes it's like, and it's like I've run out of characters. So it depends, I think, whether you really hit something that's you're quite passionate about, or when I do a rant, then I can go, as you know. But I used to get you to actually help me with do my blogs, you know, sort of sit there and we'd have conversations, and then you would kind of write them up for me. And so I always wanted to do video, but was too scared to get on and do video. And actually, doing these shows has been transformative, you know, with someone else, because I think doing it on my own would have been really hard. Just me talking to the camera, I just feel quite odd doing that. But I also started out doing like screen recordings.
yes.
And that's quite a nice little transition as well. Sometimes, if you know, you can do video in that way. If you don't want yourself on the screen, you can talk through and be in the background, but showing something on the screen.
And I think that's why it's really important. Like, you know, remember, there are some great copywriters out there. There are some great video companies out there. Like, again, you know, Amy, who we've had on both our shows, you know, Amy Burnett, hiya. But, you know, I love the way that she does her videos as an interview style. And then we've had Justina Rocha has been on. And again, I've had video work with her. And, you know, again, it's a different style. So looking at how, you know, they're the creative ones, but it is, I wouldn't necessarily be put off by doing a main piece of content, because ultimately, you know, until you try it, you don't really know. And there are different ways to suit your own personality. So again, I'm not somebody that can just be on a video by myself. The same with Clubhouse. I don't want to be in a room by myself because well, I'm kind of sick of my own voice now. Someone speak to me. So exactly
out there.
So from that point of view, we have to remember that there is a style, you know, if you think it's not video, maybe ask yourself, why do you not think it's video? And if it's because, you know, there are certain things that you're uncomfortable with, other ways that can be worked around it. Or blogging, like some people think they're not a good writer. You say that you're not a good writer, and then sometimes when I've sent you stuff and you send it back, I'm like, this is really good. Like, why on earth do you need it? Like, I think we lack the confidence in ourselves.
Yeah, I'm a good editor, so I'm not a good, when it comes to writing, I think it's that starting point, and maybe that's a block or something. But you know, when I've given a framework, then that's really good for me, and that's just, I think, how I've worked with writing stuff like that. But again, you know, people can choose audio, so if you're not happy being in front of a screen, you know, just record audio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's a question for you really, but the interesting thing is that where a lot of people are thinking about content and social media, there's two things. Majority of people are coming at it from a broadcasting point of view. And so when they've got these courses to launch or programs to talk about, or they're selling a product or a service, I was like, right, I'm going to push this now. Now I'm going to be active on social. And it's really interesting because you haven't really built that audience up and you haven't really warmed them up the same way. And if anyone's done this off the bat and it's worked brilliantly, please let us know, because yeah, you know, but I have noticed that you really can tell who it is that's doing their content consistently throughout the year and then selling something, as opposed to somebody who is just waiting and throwing up the odd post now and again and then doing a launch and then they're everywhere, which is, again, it's, you know, it's good that you're doing the launch, but where's the warm up? And I think that people forget, it's more like they think, oh, it's there to broadcast because it's free, but equally there's a lot of nurturing that needs to go on. And I think that
absolutely. And I know I sort of, you know, flat bottomed out on something I did a couple of years back. You know, I was doing a course and it was just about getting something out that you're doing, and or an offer or something like that, but I hadn't been active in doing my emails, and I just sent out this thing and I got zero response.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, you know, and I was quite flat about it. And I thought, and then I looked at it and I was like, well, what do you expect? You haven't been emailing them before, you know, or chatting them or anything, and suddenly you push out a whole lot of offers. I mean, you know, what did you expect? So you're right. You do have to, you know, you've got to be with whether it's a launch, whether it's pushing out an offer or a service or anything like that. You've got to, I think you've got to have that ongoing process of building up to it and sharing lots of valuable content in between.
And that is such an important point, actually, because I don't see content as promoting as such. Like, you know, I'm on this to do a post to then talk about what I do, because there's so many layers to it. It's actually, well, how does this fit back into the marketing mix? And again, because we've been talking about website, for me, you could have like 1,000 platforms. Like, you know, there's a platform that's popping up every blooming week, you know. So for me, where your audience attention will be will vary depending on what's coming up, their lifestyle changes. So you will lose them at some point, unless it's something like LinkedIn, where I think, well, unless if you're always going to be the professional, it's very likely you're going to be there. But, you know, I noticed how Clubhouse has been almost the offshoot for LinkedIn, you know, because people are now hearing voices. So have you really got all of their attention on LinkedIn? So the whole point is you need to get them back onto your email list. Like, that's the entire point. Now, Karen, like, where else would you host your email list, as in your signups? Is it, for me, I would imagine, like, is it more than one place?
Yeah, so you could have it at the bottom of your email signature. You could be putting it on your tab on your Facebook page. You could be sharing it within a link in your bio on LinkedIn, you know, on your website, obviously, all over it. And, you know, but we were talking just before the show, and it's quite interesting. I mean, maybe that's another conversation, but, you know, if about doing a sort of free sign up versus, you know, an offer or something, versus people just signing up because they want to hear more about you. And I think that's something you've got to be quite strategic about, because you've got to be delivering what you say you're going to delivering and when. And also people want, you know, you want people to be on your list because they really want to be on your list, not because they just signing up for that freebie that you're giving. But yeah, I agree. It's such a great way. I think it's so noisy out there. People miss posts on Facebook, people miss posts on LinkedIn, that getting an email, you know, you're going to get that email into your inbox, unless it goes to your spam, of course. Do check your spam and junk folders. Yeah. So I think that's the main point for me, is that whenever you're doing your content, like, ultimately you want them to do something. You either want them to book a call with you, sign up to the newsletter, or I call mine the weekly conversation, because it's more about, like, you know, this is our drop-in, this is a food for thought to help you along your way. And, you know, or it's an offer that they've downloaded, something like that. So I think that building up that email list is also, and getting an action out of all of that content is absolutely key. There are so many other options of doing like working through content. So from sort of like first instance, like driving conversation, the actual content, the engagement element of it is so important. Providing value, the opportunity to showcase what you stand for, absolutely, and where that expertise lies. That's obviously the first instance that you get from your content. That's what's coming through. But what I'd written also down, which we sort of like supported, but it's an ongoing process, because again, if you're putting them back into the email list, or you're being consistent with your content and you're sharing that, then actually, yeah, you're building up the relationship, which is absolutely vital. They're getting reminders like every week or every month about who you are, or every quarter, even if you don't want to do like a monthly, but at least every quarter they're getting a reminder that you're there.
And with the noise out there, there's a new competitor. I mean, I don't really believe in competitors as such, but there's always someone new out there. But again,
yeah, and people forget. I mean, I've had it before. Someone sort of, you know, I mean, going years ago, and I suddenly popped up in their feed, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot about you. I was just going, and I had this issue and that issue, and I've been bouncing from person to person trying to get this website or landing page done or something, and I completely forgot about you." And that was, you know, there's a big lesson that I wasn't doing my follow up. I wasn't posting and being visible and being top of mind. So, you know, so I think it's really important to sort of keep that consistency out there and do follow-ups with people, you know, as well. Because they might not be seeing it, even though you're regularly posting out there, they may not be seeing it.
That is such a good point. We just do not, just because somebody's not commenting or liking that content, or what, it doesn't mean that they don't see it. We say that a lot, but also going back to your point, I totally agree. Ever since I've been more consistent, the amount of people that have contacted me going, "Oh, can we have to catch up?" And you're like, wow, it's so lovely, because you're a bit nervous, aren't you? You're like, "Oh God, I haven't been in touch for like years. How are you?" And then to have this wonderful conversation again, and they're like, "Yeah, we must definitely get in touch if we need to do something." But they're seeing the content ever since afterwards. And it's just wonderful, because again, you're front of mind. That's the whole point. So again, to drive the sales, the contact, the relationships, the sign-ups, all really good. The other thing that, and again, see SEO. So if you're hosting it on your website, which is my key thing, I always say, and this is why it was so important to do the website series with you and all the various aspects, but when you're looking at a website, it is actually where all the arrows, in my opinion, of marketing should be pointing to. So that you can see if your marketing is working, you can see if, and I really noticed it, if you're sales driven, you'll be like, "But if my post has done the job, then that's it, like there's the conversion." But somewhere along the line, it's like, were you analyzing that conversion there, or you know, wouldn't it be better to analyze it straight from the website so that you can see who's doing what of the products? So it's, for me, it's really interesting to see that side of it, because it's supporting your SEO activity. But the other thing is, a lot of people again will say, "Oh, I need PR, but I cannot afford it." And it's like, yeah, but your content will also attract media, and you know, or it complements your PR activity. So you've been engaging with that journalist, but they're going back, or you followed them and they followed you, but they can see what you're doing consistently. And it goes back to that original quote of, well, at least content marketing showing you that you are the rock star that you're claiming to be, because the journalist will then see, or the influencer will see who you are, how exciting you are, whether or not they want to work with you, and that will influence their decision. They'll also
exactly. I don't think you could just have a couple of posts out there or a blog or two, you know, and a website, because people, they will look at more touch points to see that you are what you say you are. And again, I see a lot of people posting, and it's not necessarily salesy, but it's very everything relates just to their work and what they do. And I think people are demanding more to, if you're talking about building relationships, you know, it's about building rapport. When you get on a video call with someone and suddenly they just launch straight into whatever you're there to talk about, I just find it quite odd and jarring. I want to build some kind of rapport with the person first, you know, see if we're a fit, you know, a good fit to work together. So the same on your posts. I mean, you can get your personality across. You could be talking about other interests, you know, things that you do outside of work and behind the scenes, you know. So it's, you know, you don't have to go the full hog and be really, really vulnerable and, reveal your inner darkest secrets or anything like that. But I think there has to be a little bit more to it than just focusing on just around your topic in every single post that you do.
I think it goes back to being more human, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I just love the post of, yep, I did that wrong. This is why I quite like Instagram and stories for in terms of content, because I usually use my stories as behind the scenes, like this is where the funnies might come out, or a bit more, whereas the grid is a little bit more structured. And again, need to do more IGTVs or reels. I'm like really bracing myself for that. But you know, again, it's all this content. But actually, this is the really important factor. Again, we were talking about this one piece of content. If you look at Instagram alone, there are 4 ways of producing content, and they're actually preferring IGTV and reels, like actually the videos, as opposed to the grid posts. So again, there's the interesting fact here of, well, if you're doing video, for example, then you could repurpose that content, couldn't you? Or, you know, you're sharing that content elsewhere. Or, you know, you could just live stream into it, which again, friends at Yellow Tuxedo, which I'm learning stuff more about, and they're doing an amazing event called Digital Circus Live, which I cannot attend, and I'm extremely jealous, but I've learned so much in their membership about, oh, I see like where they need to be, and they're aces at it. You should definitely watch them. But yeah, it genuinely, when I see how they're repurposing that content and where they're being, it's like I feel like I am following them on their journey, and there's so much value that it's all suited to me and how I like to consume that. And sometimes we're creating the content as to what we prefer and not what our audience prefers.
Yeah, so, yeah. And then it's putting it out there in different mediums, isn't it? So for example, this video chat, okay, we're doing it live onto Facebook, then this goes onto YouTube, then it could be put into a blog. You know, you could then get it transcribed and have the blog as well as the video. But then you could then break this up into probably 10 different individual posts about, you know, specific topics. You could break that down even further into a number of just quotes or tweets. Yeah. You know, and from a number of different shows, you could combine that together into kind of an ebook or a program. You know, that it's just repurposing and, you know, making it into so many different formats,
rather than trying to think of all different ideas. The only issue that I would say, we finally got the newsletter up. So yeah, the blog is next. I'm like, oh my God, how much content? Because there's so much good content there. But now we've got the links up. It's like one thing at a time. But this is just it. It is, you know, if you're somebody that can move brilliantly fast and can set these up really quickly, then good on you. And you're setting it up and you're just blasting it out there. If I'm a solopreneur, I'm juggling so much that I'm just sitting there, like how many weeks did I turn around and go, I still haven't got this newsletter like set up, because I'm just very slow on tech. Just needed Karen to help me, but it got out in the end. But again, it's one thing that I'm now able to present as the value of what we're doing. So I now know that if you are really time poor as a business, either if you're small or you're trying to scale up and you're at that point where you still can't hire someone, at least that one piece of content is definitely the way for the killer sort of like strategy approach. So
yeah, and thinking of different ways you can share it or reuse it. And I think it's just, and also once you come up with something, trying to remain consistent with it. So don't start going, oh, I'm going to blog once a week, and then there's no way in hell you're ever going to be able to stick to that. You know, start with once a month. You can always increase that when you get in a flow and you've got a kind of a you know, sort of a framework that you're working from and stuff like that. So yeah, I do believe just, you know, do what you can. Don't sort of do what other people expect you to do or what you've been told, you know, that you should do. I think work to your own pace. It's important about feeling comfortable and enjoying doing it. I actually really enjoy sort of preparing the shows, and I really enjoy doing the shows, and I really enjoy preparing kind of some of the social media content posts now. You know, before, like, oh, such a drag, I've got to get something out, you know, what am I going to say? And now I actually look forward to doing that.
Yeah, and just getting the feedback out there, and then seeing, I love hearing from other guests, like you have guests every week, but I also like it when we have guests. So yeah, from that point of view, we're just sharing, it's building that community together. So final sort of like angle, like what does a strategy look like? Again, I would just genuinely look at what is your key brand messaging, like, you know, what is it, what's your unique value proposition, what are your personality, your values that you need to get across. There are core content pillars which we've talked about that are in line with your brand, and it varies about like what you stand for, you know, what it is that you deliver, what are the key questions that your clients will be asking you, all of these elements. And, you know, again, I've shared like content pillar ideas before, but once you put that into play, and it is, for me, the content for me is finding that one core piece and then breaking it down, exactly what you just said in terms of the show, which again, you know, it takes time, and don't beat yourself up. The amount of times that the whole point is to simplify, not overwhelm by giving you more options. It's like, all right, even if you just, I mean, for us, how long did it take in the middle of lockdown? We were so busy. It was just a case of just get started, then we'll worry about the rest of it. And now, you know, then it was sharing it on LinkedIn, then and now on Instagram, like, how am I sharing it? How am I putting it
on
out
YouTube?
there? Then on the newsletter.
Yeah, and you find ways of doing it. I mean, I was really overcomplicating stuff in the beginning. So I was recording on here, downloading the recording, and then obviously you know, I had to then take it into a program and trim the beginning and trim the end, and you know, and then re-upload it to YouTube. From Facebook, you can download the HD in seconds and upload that straight to YouTube. So now what used to take me hours, this takes me less than 3 minutes.
And again, there are other ways, and this is like, we tried StreamYard, it just didn't work for us. But again, there are other ways of doing it that it would just broadcast simultaneously. But this is video. Again, if you're a blog, you might have a blog that you can break down into a LinkedIn article. Medium's another blog platform that you could share your viewpoints are. Definitely break down, like when this is why it takes me so long to write blog posts, because I'm like, oh, put a quote in there, oh, put that in there. But again, you could break down those posts for social media. So again, there's some really good ways of getting that out there and sharing it. So
yeah, and I highly recommend, if anyone's sort of watching here and they are really struggling to just get started and with ideas and how to, you know, get going on that, is I've done a session with Christelle before. Just no, definitely. And it just well, I've had a couple of sessions with you actually, and sort of follow-ups now, but you've got a number of packages on your site. Can you maybe just mention?
Yeah, so I mean, the main one that I tend to do is it's the strategy session. So we go through content marketing and the strategy and planning of that. So I will work with you. Either you've worked with a brand strategist and we've got your brand messaging, your values and your personality, or we're trying to pull that through as best as I can for you. And then for the next 90 days, actually look through, right, what does that structure look like? And what's quite interesting for me is that, again, people go, yeah, I've got it, and I'll just throw something up. But again, it's the elements, it's going through, right, what does that post look like? What are the elements that you've got to talk about in order for that post to work? And when you work with a really good copywriter, like we've had Tamsin on here, haven't we, talking about like copywriting. She will show you what the nuances are of like keywords, you know, how important it is. There's a real structure in your posts, but also in your main content. So again, it's a case of what can you do and where do you need to outsource if you have to, but just making sure that if you have to do it for yourself, like what can you do in this first instance? So yeah, it's worked really well, but thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, do you do sort of follow-up or a follow-up session just to like kind of review what they're doing?
I do check in because I like to see how
I think that's super important, because a lot of it stuff that you buy online, you buy it, and as you say, if there's no accountability, you're not going to do it.
No, and it's really hard. And I'm finding that with a lot of clients is that, you know, that overwhelm will stick in, but it is a case of let's just get going. And if you're like me, I don't like structure, but I have to force myself into structure, and I have to force myself into blocking off time and having that accountability.
Yeah. But once you, as I say, it did feel like that to start with, but now when you get in your flow and you actually start to enjoy it and look forward to it,
you're on a roll.
I quite like when I've got that chunk out on a Monday morning, or, you know, on a Tuesday after my show, that I spend on doing all this stuff. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
I look forward to it.
You know, it's just got done and it's ready to go. Actually getting into a flow now, and this is the whole point of your content strategy, is that, you know, it's a case of starting to get get to do it, but it does get easier. I promise you, it does get easier. And if it is such a struggle, then you do know you need to outsource, but at least there is a way of dialing it down to the simplest it can be to the most effective it can be. And either way, I would say consistency is key. Just getting out there.
Great tips.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that's been of value. Again, you know, we just love to help. So even if you just want to ask questions, just pop them in the comments and we'll get back to you. But hopefully you've learned a little bit more about like content and hopefully an easier way to do it when you're starting up or scaling up. Totally up to you. All right. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week.
Yeah,
Take care.
Bye.